in a court proceeding that has nothing to do with Wendy's career. Moreover, that were made in front of Wendy Williams. If true, that is outrageous because this judge, one, she's not in the entertainment industry, so I don't know where she would get off opining about that and why that's even relevant to her role as a judge, who's basically the judge of the law, and in this case, judge of the facts.
Wendy Williams built an empire from nothing, but now she's raging. Her own son drained it while she was fighting for her health, leaving her horrified and furious. After decades of commanding the mic and the camera, of turning gossip into gold, Wendy has become the headline she used to serve. Insiders claim that while she was battling illness and locked under a court-appointed guardian, her son, Kevin Hunter Jr., signed reckless deals in her name and spent through her fortune. The woman who once ruled daytime television is now said to be fighting from inside what she calls a luxury prison, realizing that the people she trusted most may have cost her everything. We've watched Wendy's rise like a classic New York story. A sharp tongue, a radio booth, and a relentless hunger for the next big reveal. By the time The Wendy Williams Show hit its stride, she was pulling in millions, dominating ratings, and turning scandal into daytime art. She made a career out of other people's secrets. But when her own health collapsed and her finances froze, the empire she had built so loudly began to crumble in silence. For years, she called herself the Queen of Talk. Now the Queen is trapped in a guardianship she never agreed to and cut off from her own fortune.
Is one of the most outrageous things I have heard in a long, long time, in a case that has been filled with outrageous.
In 2022, the first cracks appeared when Wells Fargo filed a petition claiming Wendy was not competent to manage her affairs. They alleged she was being unduly influenced by her son. Documents show that Kevin Jr. tried to access her accounts and even sought power of attorney while she was reportedly disoriented. The bank refused, and within days, Wendy's financial control was gone. What looked like protection became imprisonment. She was placed under a guardian named Sabrina Morrissey, and from that point on, nothing about Wendy's life was truly her own. According to people close to her, she wasn't even allowed to own a phone or decide who could visit her. The woman who once phoned into live radio to grill rappers could now only make outgoing calls from a landline. While Wendy was confined and battling Graves' disease and what her guardian later called dementia, her son allegedly went on a spending spree. Sources familiar with the case say he burned through his mother's cash on luxury rentals, extravagant travel, and business projects that never materialized. One insider described it as a vanishing act of millions. He reportedly signed contracts on her behalf that turned out to be disastrous, bleeding her brand dry while she was too ill to intervene. When the dust settled, much of Wendy's wealth, once estimated in the tens of millions, was gone. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The queen of exposing other people's drama was suddenly drowning in her own family's mess. And the betrayal, those who know her say, cut deeper than anything her ex-husband's affairs ever did. Wendy has told friends she feels set up that her own family became the downfall of her empire. Those close to her claim she had warned her financial advisor years earlier not to let her son near her accounts. She reportedly said, "If something happens to me, lock it all down." But by the time that warning mattered, it was too late.
I've never taken it with the Argus son. I've always spoken to her, and she's always wanted me to spend her money.
As her health declined, Kevin Jr. seemed to gain influence. He was listed as an executive producer on her final documentary and reportedly pushed for new projects, even as she struggled to speak clearly on camera. The film, meant to be a comeback story, ended up exposing her at her weakest. Viewers saw a woman unsteady, confused, sometimes agitated. The payout was a fraction of what she was promised. Her son, however, collected fees and credit. Insiders whispered that the documentary's release marked the moment Wendy realized she had lost control, not just of her career, but of her own name. In public, Wendy insists she's fine. At New York Fashion Week this year, she appeared front row, dressed in fur and diamonds, smiling for cameras. But those close to her say it was a performance of survival. Behind that polished image is a woman furious at how her life has been rewritten. When she was granted temporary permission to leave her assisted living facility, she reportedly called it a luxury prison. She told The Breakfast Club in January, "I'm not cognitively impaired." Those words hit like a declaration of war. She's now openly challenging the system that keeps her under guardianship and blaming her son for triggering it. The financial paper trail is haunting. Court records show that her son's push to access her accounts was what first alerted Wells Fargo that something was wrong. Soon after, the guardianship became permanent, and every dollar Wendy made went through court approval. Her estate began paying enormous fees, over $25,000 a month for her residence alone, plus legal costs and retainers. Meanwhile, her son's condo in Florida, once paid by her, stood as a reminder of how much he'd gained while she lost everything.
I feel like the Guardian has not done a good job at protecting my mom. As long as she has people around who are yes people, I know that she's not getting the help that she needs or getting better.
Friends describe Wendy as both furious and frightened. Some say she spends her days listening to old recordings of her radio shows, reliving the years when her voice was her power. Others say she's plotting, determined to reclaim control and expose what really happened to her fortune. Her supporters call it the Free Wendy movement, echoing the cries that once surrounded Britney Spears. But the whispers behind the scenes are darker. Industry insiders believe a larger network may be keeping her locked in place, benefiting from her silence. We can't ignore the pattern. Her ex-husband, Kevin Hunter, once on her payroll and now cut off from alimony, is reportedly drowning in debt. Lawsuits, unpaid bills, and claims of luxury possessions sold off for cash have followed him since their split. His downfall mirrors Wendy's in eerie symmetry. Some close to her even suggest that the same people who once managed her career and profited from it are now ensuring she stays quiet while they fight for the remains. Her son, caught between those legacies, seems to be at the center of every financial mess attached to her name. Now, as Wendy continues to appear in public, front row at shows, dinners in Manhattan, sources say it's not freedom, but strategy. Each outing is reportedly a message to the court that she's capable, coherent, ready to take her life back. Her personal lawyer, Joe Tacopina, has called the guardianship unjust and despicable, vowing to challenge it. Yet even he's not officially recognized by the court. Everyone around Wendy, it seems, claims to represent her, but few actually can. The confusion works to someone's advantage, though it's not clear whose. We've reached a point where nothing about Wendy's world feels stable. Her estate is shrinking, her guardianship indefinite, and her fury growing. She's been seen smiling for the cameras, but insiders insist it's a mask for what's coming next. If her son's alleged actions destroyed her fortune, they might also have unleashed something far more dangerous, a legal storm that could expose every deal, every signature, every name tied to her decline. And if the rumors are true that powerful figures beyond her family are pulling the strings, then what we've seen so far may only be the surface of a much larger scheme waiting to unfold.
Looks at Wendy and says, you know, you had a great career. Your career is over. It is never coming back. You're done. Why would a judge say that?
Sources claim Kevin Jr. tried pulling $25,000 from her accounts while she stood disoriented in that Miami bank, and that single move lit the fuse. Wells Fargo flagged the incident as suspicious, and within days, Wendy Williams was declared at risk of exploitation and placed under court control. What was framed as a safety net became a cage. We've seen the documents in the timeline. They align too neatly for coincidence. That moment, they say, was when the guardianship machinery locked into place, transforming the Talk Queen's fortune into someone else's paperwork. Now, the story turns darker. Wendy has publicly called her residence a luxury prison, insisting she is of sound mind. She said, "I'm not cognitively impaired," with that trademark bite we remember from her television days.
The judge in the guardianship read Alex Finney, the riot act, threatened her and said, you're talking, making an accusation that she's talking to the media, and if you continue doing it, I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to do that to you. There is a gag order in this case. I can tell you that the judge has scared a lot of people involved in the case.
Yet the paperwork says otherwise. Doctors citing frontotemporal decline, legal teams labeling her permanently incapacitated. Critics argue that the diagnosis, whether accurate or not, made her the perfect target. Insiders whisper that this isn't just family tension. It's a calculated move by people who knew exactly how to profit once Wendy was silenced. Behind the velvet curtains, the finances tell their own story. Her $4.5 million duplex sold off at a loss. Monthly costs at the assisted living facility topping $25,800. Fees, retainers, lawyers, medical staff, it's all coming from the same shrinking pot. Meanwhile, sources link her son's earlier contracts to these mounting debts. Deals made under his signature that never delivered, proposals that collapsed before launch, and consulting invoices that vanished into private accounts. We can't ignore how neatly those failed projects line up with Wendy's missing money. And while the guardianship rolls on, the human cost keeps rising. Family members allege they've been blocked from visiting her, calls denied, letters returned. They describe neglect and isolation so severe that even her beloved pets were given away without her consent. One relative told reporters that the Guardian knows how to keep the family out. They call it cruelty. The Guardian calls it procedure. Either way, Wendy's world has been reduced to one floor, one room, one phone line she can only dial out from.
And I can't figure out, why is there a gag order in this case that Wendy can't talk about her circumstances? Why is the judge doing it?
That aside,
there is something
that's even
way bigger.
We've seen her try to prove herself. The fashion shows, the dinners, the posed photos. They're all signals that she's still sharp, still aware. But the tension behind the smiles tells another story. Those close to her say she's furious that the empire she built with sweat and scandal now sits behind someone else's signature. They say she keeps a mental list of every person she believes betrayed her, the lawyers who refused her calls, the former staff who sided with the Guardian, and most of all, her own son, whose actions started the spiral. Kevin Jr., for his part, insists he's innocent. He's been quoted saying, "I've never taken anything without her consent." Yet multiple insiders claim the bank saw enough to suspect influence, and that was enough for the court. It's a tragic pattern. A mother who once paid her son's rent and tuition now seeing him as the first domino in her downfall. And somewhere between their versions lies a truth no one seems willing to tell on record. The deeper we look, the more interconnected it all becomes. Her ex-husband's lawsuits, her son's failed ventures, the Guardian's rising fees. They feed into one another like gears in a machine designed to keep Wendy's assets in motion, but out of reach.
An inordinate amount of people that took advantage of my absence, and her vulnerability at the time.
Even her publicist and former manager reportedly pitched new projects while she was barely able to stand. Some say they were trying to help her rebuild. Others call it another extraction. Each person around Wendy seems to carry both loyalty and motive, love and self-interest in the same breath. We can't ignore the eerie silence from the network that once aired her show. There's been no serious move to revive it, despite the constant talk of comebacks. Some observers believe the industry has quietly closed its doors, afraid of being pulled into her legal storm, but there's also talk that powerful figures prefer Wendy off the air, fearing what she might reveal if she regained her platform. Remember, this is a woman who once taunted some of the biggest names in music and television. She knows where the skeletons are buried, and now she's the one being kept quiet. Insiders have begun piecing together what they describe as the psychology behind Kevin Jr.'s choices. Growing up in the glare of Wendy's fame meant watching his mother turn controversy into a career, and for years, he existed in her orbit without his own spotlight. Some close observers believe that once she faltered, he saw an opening, a way to finally define himself beyond her shadow. What looked like caretaking may have blurred into ambition, and ambition into control. We can't ignore how often celebrity heirs, left with influence but no structure, mistake access for ownership. In Wendy's case, that confusion might have rewritten her entire financial history. Those who followed the family for years point to a long pattern of dependency cloaked as devotion.
The banks froze everything up. Yeah. He was not in a position to pay $10,000 a month on a apartment.
Kevin Jr. grew up seeing his parents' power dynamic collapse under exposure and betrayal, a lesson that money equals leverage. When the talk show checks slowed and her health became the narrative, he allegedly stepped into the vacuum she once commanded. The problem, insiders claim, is that he lacked her instinct for the spotlight and her discipline behind the spectacle. Signing contracts without understanding the fine print, he reportedly treated her assets like a stage: grand gestures, little caution, and catastrophic results. Some sources interpret his behavior not as greed, but as panic. They say he watched his mother's empire dissolve and tried to rescue it in the only way he knew, by acting decisively, even recklessly. Yet the irony is brutal. Every move meant to protect her brand seems to have accelerated its collapse. Lawyers now trace the chain of decisions that led to failed projects, unpaid obligations, and disputed intellectual rights. Each one adds to the stack of liabilities Wendy's estate must now navigate, transforming a family's internal drama into a legal storm worth millions. We can't say whether his actions were guided by love, resentment, or desperation, but the pattern is impossible to ignore. The guardianship that followed turned a private crisis into public theater, while Wendy's fortune became a battlefield for everyone's motives. The lawsuits circling her name now measure in millions of dollars, and the courts move slower than the headlines. Somewhere inside that silence is a mother furious at the betrayal and a son haunted by what he's done, or what he's accused of doing. Either way, the damage has already rewritten both their lives, and the empire she built from talk and fire now hangs on the edge of its own unfinished reckoning. The financial trail keeps tightening. Lawyers tied to the case have reportedly billed hundreds of thousands of dollars in total, all while Wendy's own income sits frozen.
Sorry.
Her luxury apartment was liquidated, her wardrobe and jewelry moved into storage. Even her 2 rescue cats were rehomed. Every personal loss seems to come with an invoice attached. Friends who've spoken to her describe bursts of clarity followed by confusion. Some days she's planning her return to television. Other days she's convinced she's being spied on. To her supporters, these shifts prove she's under pressure, not illness. To the court, they justify keeping her confined. At the same time, we've watched her ex-husband, Kevin Hunter, spiral into his own financial troubles. He's been sued for unpaid fees, behind on property dues, and allegedly separated from the woman whose relationship broke his marriage. For Wendy, watching him fall must feel like karmic symmetry, but it doesn't refill her accounts or restore her freedom. Instead, it deepens the mystery. If everyone around her is losing, who's winning? Someone is still getting paid, and insiders hint that the paper trail might lead back to figures in the guardianship industry itself, people who profit every month Wendy stays under control. The contradictions pile up. Doctors say she's fragile. Footage shows her laughing in full makeup at Fashion Week. The Guardian claims she's safe. Family claims she's trapped. Her son swears he's protecting her. The bank says he's the threat. Every version can't be true, but each has just enough evidence to sound convincing. And while the public debates which Wendy is real, her fortune keeps slipping away in quiet transfers and monthly bills no one seems able to stop. We can't help wondering what happens if Wendy finally gets her day in court. Could she prove she's still capable and demand her freedom? Or would that trigger an even deeper look into where her money went and who helped it disappear? Because if the rumors are right, the Guardian might only be one piece of a much larger design, a chain of people shielding themselves under the guise of protection. As Wendy fights to break free, the questions only grow louder. Who truly profited from her downfall? Was this about health, or was it about power? And if she ever steps back into the studio, what secrets might she spill about the people who kept her quiet? We've seen comebacks before, but never one shadowed by so much intrigue. So, what do you think? Will Wendy's fury finally expose the real villains, or are we only seeing the first act of an empire's collapse? Until next time, stay curious, stay sharp, and keep your eyes on the story that refuses to end.